In my last video, I looked at the differences between a face-to-face CELTA course and a fully online CELTA course and basically came to the conclusion that there weren't many differences. But I have noticed, as I've been watching TP online, that there are a few issues that perhaps are exacerbated by being online, and so I wanted to talk about those today. I know what you're thinking. Obviously there's the potential for technological trouble. Can I manage the breakout rooms? My screen is frozen, that kind of thing. These sort of issues are difficult to avoid when you're working online. But actually, those aren't the kind of things that I particularly noticed and want to talk about. What I'm seeing is that there are a couple of issues which are already problematic in the face-to-face classroom for trainees, but which are magnified by that online environment. I'm Jo Gakonga from ELT-Training, and in this video I'm going to look at 3 pitfalls to avoid to help you make your online teaching a rip-roaring success. Problem number 1, it's not all about you. It's always a challenge to stop talking in the classroom. You're nervous, they're all looking at you. You want to be the teacher. Teachers talk, don't they? And you're trying to be polite, and all of these things lead to one outcome. It's often called teacher talk time, or TTT, and it's a problem for a few reasons. The first is that if you talk at anyone long enough, you'll just put them to sleep. Quite a lot of people have said this about my videos before now, actually. The second thing is that in an English classroom, you're talking to people who don't know the language well. So as far as they're concerned, it's kind of a wall of sound coming at them. Do they actually understand all that you're saying? And the third and most important thing is that learning a language is a skill, and learning any skill requires practice. You have to actually do it. And if the teacher's the one who's talking, then the learners aren't the one that are getting the practice. In the online classroom, perhaps because there's not that physical presence, the silence in the classroom, while the learners are thinking, perhaps, sounds even more scary, and it's even more tempting for the teacher to fill in that silence with just more talk. Oh, you say, it's okay, I'm always talking to my learners. I'm always asking them questions and they're talking back to me. I'm not talking just at them. Well, this might be true, but this kind of interaction pattern is also problematic, and again perhaps is exacerbated in the online environment. If the interaction pattern is always one teacher to one student, then it seems like there's interaction, but let's just do the maths here a minute. Let's say that there are 8 students in the class and the interaction pattern is teacher to student. So therefore the teacher talks half of the time, let's say 15 minutes of a half an hour lesson. 8 students speak one at a time, so the best outcome is that each student gets 1/8 of the remaining 15 minutes. That means less than 2 minutes speaking for each learner in a half an hour class. This just isn't enough. So what can you do? So the first step, I think, is becoming aware of the problem. The great thing about teaching online is that it's super easy to record it. Ask your learners permission, obviously, and reassure them that the recording won't go up on YouTube, that it's just for your development. And then record yourself, record the lesson. After the lesson, steel yourself, because nobody likes to watch themselves on video, and listen back to it. Now, a good task to do is to time every minute. Make a note of who is actually talking. Every minute, on the minute. Don't cheat, and then look back and count how much of the time you're talking. You might be quite surprised. It might be quite an eye-opener. Obviously, teachers talking isn't always terrible. There are good reasons why a teacher might talk, but not too much. Okay, so you've realised that you've got a problem. There are a few suggestions here to avoid it. The first one is to ask open questions rather than closed questions. So ask things like why and how and tell me about, rather than are you or do you. which tend to invite short answers. The next important thing is to plan for activities that include the learners. When you fill out the interaction box in your lesson plan, make sure that there's plenty of student-to-student interaction in there. Next suggestion, use the breakout rooms. This is the ideal way to ensure more group work and more pair work. This is a bit more difficult to manage than simple pair work in a face-to-face environment, but the trick is to make sure that you've got an end point, a particular task with an end point for the learners, something that they have to bring back to the classroom afterwards. That will ensure that they stay engaged in the room even when you're not monitoring them. So rather than just telling them to talk about what you did last night, you could ask them to tell their partner 3 things that they did last night, and one of them has to be a lie. And then maybe when they report back, the partner can say which was the lie and whether they were fooled or not. Another suggestion for increasing student interaction is to use the chat box. You could ask them to write the answer to a question in the chat box, but only post it when you say go or whatever. This will mean that everybody has a chance, not just the able learners and not just the fast typists. Another suggestion is to get them to write on the screen. This is surprisingly engaging. People like to do this. You could use a Padlet screen or just the whiteboard in Zoom or whatever, and you could use it for revision or for brainstorming, all sorts of ideas here. The main thing is that you want to involve your learners, get them doing something so that it's not just you talking at them. Problem number 2 is engaging your learners. The second big problem that seems to be exacerbated online is the difficulty in engaging your learners. Now, I've seen a lot of lessons that are dominated by exercise after exercise on PowerPoint. Online, it's perhaps easier to organise controlled practice activities, so it's tempting to just give them a gap fill, let them do it, do the feedback and repeat ad nauseum. A teacher friend of mine used to call these chicken lessons because it was all book, 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 book. I'm not saying that they'll learn nothing, they'll probably get something out of it, but it's rather dull. And my feeling is that better engagement leads to better learning. So what can you do about this? I think that something to remember is that you probably need to be more animated online. You need to show your emotions more. You need to be bigger. You haven't got your physical presence to rely on, so you have to use your voice more actively. Smile more, gesture more, just make them see you. Remember that it doesn't have to be all about exercises. Stand up. Use a wall, use a physical board if you've got one. Turn your camera around and show them your house. Show them an object that's important to you and talk about it. Do a live listening like that. Get them to do the same thing. You could use YouTube videos or other online resources to liven up your classroom. Don't feel that because you're online, you just have to sit in front of your screen and show PowerPoint slides. You really don't. I've actually made a course online that's all about this, so that might give you some ideas too. Also, when you do use PowerPoint, make sure it looks nice. Use colour, use images, and keep the text to a minimum. Pixabay is fabulous for copyright-free images. Canva is great, even the free version is fantastic for nice designs. It'll make you into a design genius actually very easily. Remember that a lot of learners will be accessing this on their phone, so it's a small screen. They can't read a lot of text on a PowerPoint slide, so keep the text to a minimum, have it nice and big and clear, and have more slides. Problem number 3, it's all in the timing. This problem is another one that everybody struggles with in the face-to-face environment as well. Timing, making sure that your lesson finishes on time and you get everything in that you're supposed to have got in. Under any circumstances, online or face-to-face, it's difficult to estimate how long an activity will take. And you're much more likely to underestimate how long it's going to take than overestimate it. The problem with this is that you end up running out of time, and the important part of your lesson, which is probably the freer practice, which is probably at the end of your lesson, gets dropped off the end. This part, where the learners actually use the language in an authentic kind of way, is crucial to learning, so that doesn't want to be dropped off. Online, this is even more of a problem because, of course, the technical aspects take up time. You've got to get people into breakout rooms, that takes time. Get them back out of breakout rooms, that takes time. Maybe there are some technological hitches. All of this eats into your lesson time. And suddenly your time's up and you haven't got to the parts you really wanted to get to. There are a couple of useful thoughts to help here, and they're both in the planning. That's the key. The first one is to make sure that your estimates of how long things take are very conservative. If you think something's going to take 5 minutes, give it 8 or even 10 on your plan. And also remember, nothing in a language classroom takes 2 minutes, so I wouldn't put such a short amount of time for any stage. But you'll say to me, what happens if those activities do take 5 minutes and I'm left at the end with 10 minutes to fill and nothing to do? So this is the second useful thought, is to try adding some flexi stages to your lesson. These are activities which will be useful, but they're not essential. Don't play hangman. Think of something more useful than that. You could put one of these stages in the middle or at the end, and as you're going through your lesson, keep an eye on the time and see whether you need to include it or not. If you're getting through the material faster, you can use your flexi stage. You'll probably find that you won't need to, but you've got the confidence that it's there if you do need it. So there we are, 3 potential potholes in the road to try and avoid when you're doing your online teaching practice. I hope that this has been helpful and that you find the other things on my site, ELT Training, useful as well. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.